Hey, welcome to episode 66, or as we Star Wars fans say, episode 66 of Scar Bearers. I'm Chris DT Gordon, and as always, it's a pleasure to have you here with me today. And also with me, in an ethereal technological sense, are Nate and Britton Barron, giving me their music and post-production talents. If you want them to work their magic on your productions, you can reach them at Nate Barron. Well, folks, we are in the throes of summer, and I know that we're all not thinking about school, but as you know, I speak to students about the attitude of gratitude, or TAG. And so if you think my message would benefit your students or your kids' classmates, or maybe some other kids you may have seen walking down the street, and you know what school they go to, but not in a creepy way because it's a small neighborhood, reach out to me so I can share TAG with them, and hopefully I won't meander and metaphorically like I just did. So you can reach out to me at linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon so I can share the message of TAG with them and hopefully help them fight their personal bacteria. Now, speaking of bacteria, I have a fellow NF warrior with me, Coleen Sosinski. Coleen, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. And you?
I'm doing excellently well. Thank you very much. But, I have a bit of a beef to pick with you. It appears not only are we fellow NF warriors, but you seem to think that the medical institution where you were served, where you had received your medical treatment for NF, is better than mine. I went to the Mayo Clinic. If I were to borrow the attitude of that college that is below Michigan and throw the in there, I'm going to. But you went to St. Luke's, Aurora St. Luke's in Milwaukee, correct?
Correct.
And
but they have more hyperbaric beds than Mayo does.
But does that make it better? Because, I slept in a bunk bed with my brother for years, and we had more beds than my sister had in her room, but she got more sleep in her room than we did. So just because more doesn't mean it's better.
I'll give you that, but I'm going to keep saying they're the best because they kept me alive, and they sure had their odds against them.
You know what? We'll let that go.
All right.
We can agree to disagree at worst, but I'm happy that you're here with me. And so, speaking of that, what brought you here with me? If you could just tell me a little bit about life before NF, and then we'll get into the meat of the story.
Well, I was a medical assistant. I'd been fairly healthy. I had some asthma issues, and in 2019, I got some pretty severe blood clots that brought me to our other competitor, UW-Madison's hospital, and I clotted kind of from the kidneys down to my feet. And I had surgeries to take those clots out. It was a 12-hour surgery. Odds were 60-40 that I wasn't going to make it through that surgery. We thought that was the scare of my life, and 2020 was going to be the best year ever. Mm-hmm. We won't even talk about pandemics. 2020 was awful. I was in the house walking around, and my legs started to hurt. Got worse. Finally, I told my husband to bring me to the hospital because it was in so much pain. I didn't have a nick, a scratch, a cut, a bite, nothing, no bruise. I hadn't ate it, but my leg hurt worse than anything I could imagine.
There was nothing that could have, you felt could have precipitated that?
Nope, not even looking back. And the surgeons looked at my leg very closely before they went and did anything to it.
Okay.
I walked into the ER on my own power. My husband did have to wait out in the car because of COVID, so he didn't know much of what was going on. Within 12 hours, I was on a ventilator.
Mm.
And they asked my family if they wanted to come see me before I went on a vent, and they decided they didn't want to make that trip and have that be their last memory.
Mm.
The doctors had already told them how scary this could be.
Yeah.
And I had an amazing doctor who, in the first few days, began to think this was NF.
Okay.
And thought it was before pathology came back.
What did
And he was treating me for it.
Did he ever give you any idea as to what caused him to think that it was NF when others didn't?
Because of the way the CT scans looked, there was some fluid air bubble type things in there. And by the way it was progressing, the way it was moving, and the way my skin looked, and I was getting these huge blisters.
Mm.
And I, of course, was unconscious for this because I was on a vent and didn't know anything. It was almost a month before I woke up.
Now, the progression of my NF was described as a forest fire. Did yours act in a similar way?
Very much so. It started on my left leg. It was on my lower leg, my upper leg. I lost part of my calf muscle. It also jumped onto my right leg, and I have a little bit of it on both arms.
Okay.
I also got damage because my blood pressure was so low. I had a blood pressure of 44/20, which one nurse joked that that's 44 over dead. That it usually low. You can't even read that. Mm-hmm. I had damage because they had to put me on medications called pressors that take and press all the blood from your fingers and extremities back into your organs. Because you need your organs, you don't need your hands. Yeah. Much as we like them, you don't need them.
And they're just tools, you know.
Yeah, we don't use them, but I mean, you need your heart and your brain more than your hand. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have open, sore, blistering kind of problems on my hands and feet the rest of my life because of those medicines.
Oh, wow.
But I'd rather have those sores and blisters and have my hands and feet than have them not use those drugs.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't be here. I mean.
Okay. And so how long were you in the hospital for NF and for the recovery of it after it?
We called it my 6-month sublet in Milwaukee. I was there from June till December.
Okay. So all kinds of change.
All kinds of change. And I couldn't, my view out of my window was a parking ramp, which my son figured out using his iPhone and Find My Phone. He was able to drive around that parking lot and figure out where I was and where he was. And he went up to the 8th floor so he could wave to me. Mm-hmm. That was our visit. You hear people talking about seeing the elderly in the nursing homes through the window. He was in a parking ramp half a block away. But using your iPhone zoomed in all the way and me waving a red menu card, they were able to actually tell what room I was in.
Well, many people bemoan technology, but especially in this last year, technology is showing right now has really helped bring people together and has made some indelible memories.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have, even though they were weird visits, it was wonderful when they came up on the weekends. Mm-hmm. I didn't see my husband for 19 and a half weeks.
Wow, that is, yeah.
And then when I did see him, it was like, okay, stay 4 feet away. You can't touch me. I'm still contagious. But I got to see him. God forbid he give me a hug.
Yeah. But they didn't have any hazmat suits he could put on?
The nurses wore the hazmat suits, but they would not let anybody in. I kept getting weird bacteria, whether it was a UTI or an infection in my skin. I'd keep coming up with weird bacteria that was hard to treat. Never had MRSA,
Mhm.
but so they were very cautious and just like, no, for your protection, he had to stay away. And I was just happy to see him.
Mhm.
There were tears for quite a while when he walked in.
So speaking of, you said that you had a red menu you were waving. Now I have a very vivid memory of the pizza at Mayo Clinic being phenomenal. Was there any food item at your hospital that you really clung to?
I ordered the tilapia with green beans every single night.
Oh, really?
And because I was listed as contagious, they couldn't give me real plates and things like that. It would be on this styrofoam and not real hot. So I would use my hair dryer that they give you when you have a skin graft to dry your skin graft
Yeah.
off. I'd use that hair dryer to warm up my green beans so the butter would melt.
Wow, that's I have to say I've never heard a hair dryer used to melt butter. So first time for everything.
You get sick of the hospital food after 6 months, and my family would bring me treats, once a week. And it had to be just one serving. You couldn't refrigerate it or save it or anything. But
Yeah.
once a week, somebody would usually come up. And I remember my brother slicing apples and cheese. And I thought that was just heaven to have some fresh, good food.
So, with this, with you staying for 6 months, was it all for the recovery from these surgeries, or were there different situations that would arise that would keep you in the hospital?
No, I was there 6 months strictly for the recovery from the NF. I luckily never got COVID,
Mhm.
which I'm surprised because I was worried about. But I did have one area on my thigh that got a cleft that didn't want to heal up, and we had to wait for that to heal so they could do a skin graft.
Okay.
And that just took forever and drove me nuts because I knew what we were waiting for and it was taking so long.
Yeah, I remember my own experience that if a lot of things were being held up by the healing. And even after I was discharged, I couldn't, go swimming for another 6 months because I still had open wounds on my skin grafts. And so, yeah.
And they've told me I can never go swimming again.
Oh,
that
really?
if I want to do therapy, I can go into a physical therapy pool or a YMCA pool, but no lakes and no public pools at like a hotel.
Oh, wow.
Nope, they don't want to risk it because there was just too much damage.
Yeah, that's
And I think that may be because I'm always going to have a little bit of an open wound on my feet and on my hands.
Yes, yeah, from that.
I know there's some NF people that get to swim and get to do those things. It might be because of my feet that they said that. When I woke up from I don't know what it was called, but when I woke up after being asleep for 3.5 weeks, I thought this was all my fault. Ketamine gave me a wonderful ride. It made me think that it was wintertime and I took my aunt and uncle's boat out for a ride and crashed their boat on some ice chunks. And my transfer from the local hospital in Oshkosh to Milwaukee, I thought was the Coast Guard. And I had this whole story built up in my head. And each time they do another wound debridement, or every day, I would get another little chapter that I would tap on
Oh,
to it.
that's funny.
So when I finally woke up, the nurse was like, "Here, call your mother. She wants to talk to you." And I'm like, she's gonna yell at me. I'm not calling my mom. I'm afraid to talk to her. I'm gonna get chewed
Chapter.
out. I crashed a boat. I don't want to
Catch the
call
boat,
her.
yeah.
And
Wow, that's yeah, I laugh. I laugh not because I'm teasing you, but because I can commiserate, because I remember the very first memory I had after waking from my coma was thinking I was at the bottom of a swimming pool, that it was pummeling me with green liquid. It turned out I was throwing up CT fluid in my hospital bed. They don't have water slides in the better hospital that I was in. So, and then, I vividly have this memory of arguing with the nurse that the swimming pool above my room was leaking and I was being dripped on.
well, I was very proud because every morning they would ask me, "Do you know where you are?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, what day it is? And do you know who the president is?" Well, I would always, they'd ask me what hospital I was at, and I'd always say, "The Medical College of Wisconsin." I wasn't there. And then they'd ask me who the president was. And my response would always be, as a little kid would say, "I don't know, but I don't like him." And I guess I would say it that same way every single day. And so they always like to get a chuckle out of, well, who's going to go tell Colleen who's the president?
Yeah. So after you were discharged in December, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was reacclimating to home life like for you?
Well, 2 days before I got discharged, we still didn't know if I was good enough for me to come home. I needed to learn to walk 16 feet, which is 8 feet into the bathroom and 8 feet out of the bathroom. If I couldn't walk that far with a walker, I couldn't go home, and I was going to a nursing home.
Okay.
And I knew if I went to a nursing home, I wasn't getting out. I mean, I knew in my heart if I went to a nursing home again, because I went there after my blood clots, I knew I wouldn't get the same kind of care I was getting at the rehab hospital. So if they couldn't make me learn to walk, I was staying in the nursing home.
Gotcha.
And those last 2 days, I learned to walk.
There's something about certain kinds of motivation to get you moving.
Yes. And I made it home, and, it started with walking one lap around our little house. We've got a little ranch that it kind of makes a circle, and physical therapy would come and help me walk one lap. And then I was walking 5 laps, and then it was 20 laps. And now I just did a 6-minute walk test, and I walked about 800 feet.
Awesome.
And it's awesome, but with the difficulty with my feet, and I also have lymphedema, which is swelling because I lost so many lymph nodes in my leg.
Mm-hmm.
I have trouble with some swelling. So I did great on that walk, but today and tomorrow I'm paying the consequences where it's very difficult to walk. But at least I know I can get out of a house if it's on fire.
Yes.
I can't walk that far every day, but each day I'm getting better, and they're no longer setting goals for me. The goal was for me to walk 20 feet. I blew that out of the water. Then we want you to walk 50 feet and 100 feet. And now I've walked 700 feet, and it's amazing what my body's letting me do. It's not so much I am doing the work I know there's an end point where my body will just, this is the limits, this is what I can do. I'm amazed that I'm able to do as much as I am, and everything I gain is just a blessing.
I love that attitude, because so many people, they will bemoan the fact that they can't do what they used to do, and they focus all on the negative. And you and I both know we're always going to have reminders of our experience. I'm reminded every day. I look at my arm. I'm a discount Deadpool. Okay. If you don't know who he is, ask your son. I'm sure your son knows. But even with our continued struggles and our continued reminders, we can still choose to be positive. We can still choose to be grateful and keep, as I say, passing on perfection and going for greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I'll admit I'm a runner, and, my level of greatness is, not yours, but that doesn't mean yours is any less great, especially with what you've been through. And I'm immeasurably impressed with what you've been able to do and what you are going to do, because I know you're going to keep working hard at it. And so, I guess this is a good point, to ask, what do you have planned going forward now?
I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for me. I just recently admitted to myself that I'm not going to be able to go back and work. And that was difficult. So what I'm going to do from this point, I don't know. I'm very blessed that my husband is still working and that he's done at noon. So we've got that time together from noon on. And that was very important in the beginning, that I wasn't home alone a lot, because it was too scary to go from I'm in ICU for 4 months to being home and being left completely alone.
Yeah.
We made sure there was a visiting nurse or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist every day. What am I going to do from here? I don't know. I'm having fun doing some arts and crafts stuff, and I've just had fun doing that. I'm really limited. I have to keep my legs elevated a lot because of some problems I have with the blood clots, where my legs swell. If I keep them down, just even sitting, I have to have them elevated in a recliner because they will turn purple. So I can't do a whole lot of physical stuff. So we're right now just playing and figuring out what we're going to do. My husband just got me a craft table, and there's spots to store baskets. Well, that's not what we're going to use it for. My legs are going to go in that middle section so that they're elevated while I'm working and doing my crafts.
Well, there you go.
So we're just playing with stuff, and we're just going to enjoy as much time together as we can.
That's great. And
because we didn't know that we were going to have time together.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, take the time that you have. Like you said, I don't mean to be morose, but like you said, you don't know how much time you have left, or you didn't know you're going to have this time, so you might as well take advantage of it. But you are going to be on TV, or as of this this recording, you are going to be on TV soon, correct?
Yes, I did an article with WISN channel 12 out of Milwaukee talking about necrotizing fasciitis, and I felt it was important to do this now because May is Necrotizing Fasciitis Awareness Month. And I was sitting here one night with my husband and said, hey, what if I send him an email and see if telling my story, if it makes one person aware that they need to go in for help as soon as they feel something wrong. And by something wrong, I mean pain out of proportion. That's what they say the number one symptom is. If you have a sore that is, or an injury that's more sore than it should be, that pain out of proportion, or if there's no sore and you just have this pain, go in and get it checked. Another hour could have made mine progress too far and they wouldn't have been able to save me. I say that they couldn't see anything wrong with my legs, but I was septic already. My lab numbers were horrible. I mean, if it would have been an hour later, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
So time is of the essence. If you think you have something going on, get it checked.
I always ask my guests, what is one message they could give someone to take away from our conversation? And that's a great one. Would there be another message you like to send with our friends for them to take away from this conversation besides that?
Just value every day. And if something's bothering you, sit there and think, is this going to be a problem in 5 years? If you're bickering with your husband and it's something simple, just think, is it going to bother me in 5 years? If it's not, shut up and let him think he's right.
Sometimes he needs that.
And sometimes I need that too.
Yeah.
It's hard for me because I'm struggling with what reality is because of the whole ketamine thing. I had hallucinations and I told my husband or my son, well, yeah, you were up in the ICU and I still remember you had the greatest smile. You looked up at me and you smiled. And he's like, nah, I was never in the ICU and we would all be wearing masks if we were. So I have to sit there and think, now, is this something that really happened? Or is this something that I dreamt up? Because there are memories that I think are true. And everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, no, sorry, it's the ketamine. And you just have to accept it that, okay, that's a hallucination. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still sure my wife bought me comics that she's never given me during my hospital stay. I'm still waiting for them, and the little hologram tesseract that she brought in. I swear she brought it in. It was so real. So I'm with you.
I'd rather have that than crash your aunt and uncle's boat on an iceberg in June.
Yeah, I could see that, especially a boat. Now, were you on Lake Michigan?
No, I wouldn't have been. I would have been in Prescott, Wisconsin, Hudson area by the Twin Cities.
Okay.
By another rival.
Well, Colleen, I really applaud your bravery, and I cherish your time that you've given me in our conversation. Where can others reach out to you if they want to talk with you to gain some inspiration?
Through Facebook, or my email is coleen.sosinski@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. Well, I do have to end with one final question. What is your favorite dinosaur?
You're going to yell at me, but I'm going to say it. It's a pterodactyl, which isn't really a dinosaur.
I've had people say themselves, so I'm not gonna split hairs, but I must ask, why a pterodactyl?
Because they look cool, they can fly, they're the little guy, everybody forgets about them, but they were pretty important in time if you actually go back and study.
Yeah, the way they could fly around and they drop things, and also they're a transformer, so that's good. They're one of the 5 Dinobots, so that works. Well, Colleen, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for spreading awareness and all your programs. My son actually has keratoconus, and I know you just did an episode about that. So you've just spread so much awareness about so many things. So thank you for what you do also.
I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. And so folks, like Colleen said, if you think that there might be an issue that you're not, that you feel some pain, you're not aware of how you got that injury, go seek help. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength, because we are social people. We need each other. And so use other people's strengths to help you. And that's not only for physical pain, but also emotional pain, mental pain. We are all social. We need each other. We might as well use each other's strengths to make us all better. So folks, thank you very much for joining us today. Again, you can find me at linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. You can find the podcast, the YouTube channel, my speaking website, some other freebies, and just pop in and say hi. So thanks a lot for joining me today. Have a great day. Oh, and by the way, subscribe. I always forget to mention that sometimes. Subscribe, share these podcasts around. Please make sure you get the word out, like Colleen said. I do decent work, I think. And so I think the messages that I share are valuable. So subscribe, review them, leave stars, leave smiley faces. Okay, that's good. All right, now please have a great day, and remember to pass on perfection and go for greatness.